So I thought I'd do another quick teardown today. I've got this old 14-inch monitor. It's just a 14-inch LCD monitor. Only got VGA inputs, that old. It's actually got a fault where you get a green line down the screen, but it was handy just to use as a monitor to chuck on something for testing, or you could use it on a server or something. But some time ago I went to pick it up and I grabbed it by the framework of the screen, which obviously I shouldn't have done, and all of this just sort of came away, and you can see it's all just broken. So, and it seems like the plastic's gone really brittle because it just crumbles. I'm not putting any real amount of pressure on that at all, and it's just, this looks like the sun's just completely destroyed the plastic. So there's really no point keeping it at all anymore. So I thought, well, let's pull it apart and do a teardown. So we'll start off by just getting this stand off the back out of the way, because that's a big lump. That's just the usual screws. It's a standard Visa mount type layout. Yeah, it's just a very basic stand. Doesn't even have any height adjustment, just tilt, no rotation or anything. Not a lot of use really. I think it's got like a rotating base to make it easy to spin on the desk, but that's about it. The screen, as I say, you've just got power input and VGA. It looks like there's other places on this casing for other possible options, but other than that there's not a lot. Doesn't appear to be any obvious screws. It looks like at the bottom here it's a clip of some sort, but judging by the plastic I don't think we're going to need to even worry about the clips, to be honest. It's just, well, it's not so bad, but yeah, I mean, it's just coming apart. You see all the clips have just broken dead easily. I'm not putting any real amount of force on this. It's just peeling to pieces. So we've got some kind of front panel PCB down here. Yeah. Just little tactile dome style switches on here, and some LEDs for indicators of some sort. That's just been soldered onto this flex cable here. So I would expect, yeah, so the screen, we've got some screws along the side, and there's another one there, so I assume that this will lift out to some degree, and then those screws probably be a bit more accessible. On the side there's a metal frame holding the screen onto the frame, and obviously I don't need to be too careful with this because it's scrap, but ordinarily you'd probably be a little bit more careful with it. It might actually have come out the casing in one piece actually without doing this, thinking about it. Let's just try that. Let's just turn it over. Yeah. So that would have probably come out from there anyway. This plastic seems okay. It just seems to be this grey border that's gone really brittle. Here you can see the flex cable going off under this shielding. Power switch. Not quite sure what that's all about, so we'll just remove all these screws. Usually you'll get a big, fairly reasonably thick steel plate on the back, which tends to be what everything is attached to, and as you can see the VESA mounts on here, so all the weight's transferred through this into the stand directly, and then everything sort of hangs off of this plate. So these are obviously shielding and covers. These wires up here will probably be for the backlight in all likelihood. And actually you can see on the side now some of these screws that I removed here. They attach the actual screen to the metal frame. So the screen will be its own assembly as well. There's a little metal bracket there which is just for the power switch. That's all it's for, just to get the power switch in the right place. See, that's mostly coming off now. These wires will probably be on some kind of detachable mounts. There's some more down there, again that's to do with the backlight most likely. So you can see there's another lead which connects the display to the main board. In theory should just pull off, but it's been gunked up, that's why. So that's separated that part from the actual LCD panel. So these will be backlights. There's probably going to be a top and a bottom, and it'll be like a tube light that you'd get, the old long tube lights like you used to get in your kitchens and that. And that will be the data connection to actually drive the display. It's got a proper name, but I can't remember what it is. So that big chunk there is your display, and you can see it's quite an old one. If you take a look how thick that is, that's quite a chunk for a screen, and there's most of the weight's there actually. So we'll just go back to this again. The likelihood here is we're going to have a power supply board separate, and then the main board which accepts the inputs and drives the display. This is probably going to be the power supply board. So we'll see if we can get one of these out one at a time. It's highly unlikely there'll be any charge in this now because it's been unused for so long. Another thing I'll have to undo actually is these nuts on the VGA connector. Usually just a bit of a tweak to loosen them, and then you can do the rest by hand. It looks like they've actually grounded this by soldering some tabs on, which is a bit annoying, but we can soon sort that out. This flex cable on it, yeah, that's socketed there, and then we've got our power connection here. So that's the main board which just drives the display basically. VGA input, and then that just drives the panel. I'm not sure if that's some kind of standard board. There's probably, I assume that's a ROM chip of some type. Not entirely sure. So that's all there is to the driver board really, not a lot to it. It's got a VGA there. Would have had an option for DVI by the looks of it, that's not populated. That could have been composite input maybe, I'm not sure exactly. That could be a fairly standard chip to convert one of these signals to this type of display, this particular display module. There are boards you can buy to do this sort of conversion from VGA, HDMI and various other sorts to this LCD drive. There's different standards, I'm not sure what this is. That could be a ROM chip maybe, possibly containing settings and things like the manufacturer logo or something. Again, I'm not entirely sure. But that will be the board that drives the display. And then this connection here is from the power supply from here. There may be signals feeding back to this as well to turn on and off things like the backlight, because the backlight's driven from this power supply board. And then the control panel was basically connected up through here like that, and that's just your fairly standardised set of buttons on there and some indicators. It's just got this plastic, well, it looks like it might be a jacket around it, just for insulation, so nothing shorts. Let's pretty much release that. So there's a couple of different areas to this. There'll be the main side of it, but the actual backlight is a CFL tube, as I was saying earlier, and they're high voltage, and they're driven through these ports here. I think there's another one at the bottom here. So they require quite a high voltage, which is what these little transformers will be for here. So as I say, with this connector, there may be some communication going back the other way as well, to actually tell the power supply to turn on or off the supply to the backlight. Obviously this is normally going to sit in like a standby state, so there'll be a sort of a low power mode that this can run in, and then when you press the power button it will probably activate more of this power supply to drive the display and give a full power supply to the board itself. But there's nothing really obviously marked out on here as to what's what. And again, this has been soldered to this metal plate, I guess partly for grounding, and it just secures it a bit better. So there's the power supply. Unfortunately a screen like this is of so low value it's not worth even keeping bits like that or listing them on eBay. They're of no real value anymore. It's just the metal plate, and there you go there, high voltage warning. So that's the main chassis that holds it all together. As I was saying, the VESA mount for your stand will screw into there, and that's sort of what anchors everything together. So that just leaves us with the panel for the screen, which, as I say, it will be a module in itself. It's quite a thick one. Obviously it must be to do with the age of it. They're normally significantly thinner than this now. We've got some screws up here, so we'll have a dig around up here and see what we can find. I expect to find some CFL tubes up here, at least one. I think there might be one at both ends. There's probably circuitry under here actually as well, which will be another reason for the panel. So that's basically your driving circuitry there, and you can see along here these flexes, these will actually all connect to the LCD driving the rows and the columns. That's been well secured, so that's probably going to be wired straight to the actual LCD, this board. But we'll see as we get further in. And these are your wires for the backlight tubes. They'll go somewhere around there. Again, we should be able to see them soon. So with these, you've often got like clipped areas on the side. So what you have to do to get in here is just prise these open a bit. Just go along and then eventually should be able to lift the framework off. Once you get one end, you can generally start to work around. You can see that's lifting away there. That's just a case of going to the other side and doing the same thing. You can replace the tubes if the tubes go, if you can get hold of them. Although it's not always the easiest of things to do, it is possible. But again, whether it's worth it is another story. And there's some kind of, probably a grounding tape there. So that's what tends to hold the screen together. Again, you can see more of these flex cables down here now. Not quite sure how they're connected, but these will actually have driving circuitry on them. So these little shiny lines, they show up very well. Those little shiny lines on there, they're actually chips that drive the LCD. You have some for the rows and some for the columns, and they will activate the pixels on the screen. On a TV, a lot of the time, if you look on a TV, you'll find there's two of these boards, or more than two of these boards, and they'll go all the way along one edge horizontally and all the way along the shorter edge vertically. Again, they're what drive the display. So we've got more clips again, and these should remove this plastic frame from the front. Again, it's a case of just following these clips all the way around to release it. We don't seem to have anything that side, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. The likelihood is it's all just going to fall apart. Annoyingly, some of the clips have now reattached themselves. Okay, so that wire's probably holding that in. For some reason this corner won't release. So it looks like there's a little screw in here, buried down in here, holding this piece of metalwork to the black plastic. So I think that's what's holding this on. So I've just managed to find a screwdriver that actually fits this screw, and that's released the frame. And there's one of these on each corner by the looks of it. So there's another one here. Just try and move that so it's just tucked in down there. I'm going to assume this is the same this side. No, it just seems to be where the wires are connected for the backlight. So let's see if we can. That's not really supposed to be bent like that, but never mind. Okay, so there we go, you see. So there's some more clips under here. That's why I couldn't see any clips on that side, because they're tucked under here. This is the problem with taking something apart that you've got no experience with, and why a lot of the time it's easy to damage something when you're first taking it to pieces. Again, you can see here these little reflective parts for the drivers for the display. So now in theory the actual screen part should come away. And as you can probably see, that's semi-transparent. Now, what you then have in most displays is a couple of layers of diffusion type plastic, and what this does, it spreads the light out evenly on this surface, because obviously there's only a light at either end normally, or sometimes just one end. So this somehow spreads the light out and gives you a diffused version of the light. And there's usually 2 or 3 layers of this, different, just they're all different in some way. They've got like a pattern on them. You see they're all semi-translucent. This one's got quite a coarse matte finish, and you can see as my hands go further away, it just sort of blurs them out, and that's how it diffuses the light. So if you need any diffused plastic, one option is to take apart an old LCD screen or a broken LCD screen, and you'll get a load of this stuff out of it. There's usually like an acrylic clear plastic layer, which I think is what this is. So we're getting to the point now where we should be able to find the lights. So it looks like this layer comes off as well. Again, a lot of things are unfortunately are glued. I think this is clipped in here though. Fortunately, it doesn't matter if this is broken. No, can't be bothered anymore, so. So here we go, this is where the lights are. So we've got this sort of aluminium back panel, which gives the screen its strength. And then you'll see here there's these CFL tubes, just like the tube lights you'd have in the house. And the reason there's 2 wires is because there's actually looks like there's 2 tubes in here maybe. Not entirely sure of the reasoning for that. And there's a loose screw there. There's a loose screw on the other end of the camera as well. So yeah, 2 there, one of those would be the bottom and then one at the top. So again, 2 more, and these are driven by quite a high voltage. And you can get a nasty shock off of them if they're active. And like your normal tubes in the house, you can see here over time these tend to blacken at the ends when they've had a lot of use. You can probably see that there, they're starting to go dark, and eventually these will get flickery and not produce as much light. This is some kind of a semi-reflective white background, and then you get this lump of plastic, which again is to do with diffusing the light. I don't exactly know how it works. You can see it's got this sort of a pattern etched onto it. If that's easy to see or not. Like a hexagonal pattern, and all of this together, all these different layers are what make the light bounce around and then just give you a fairly even backlight to the display. And this is just basically the LCD. There's a plastic frame attached to it. You can't see it on the camera, but if you look very close you can actually just about see the pixels. I assume that these are not all for the columns, but some of these will probably map through to these on the edge here for the row drivers as well. And this stuff here is just the glue that was holding this to the frame. And you'll see as with most LCDs, once they break you start getting these patterns, and that's basically the liquid crystal just moving around in the display. So you see these sort of patterns starting to appear, and that's what gives you this sort of dark effect when a screen's been broken. It's probably more noticeable with that behind it. Yeah, it seems a shame, but it is dead anyway. The fault that's actually causing the lines will be one of these little chips that's embedded in this ribbon, in these flexes. Will have some faults, and then basically what will be happening is they'll be driving pixels when they shouldn't be, so they'll be turning pixels on when they shouldn't be on. Not much else I can really do with this. You can see that crystal, LCD crystal, leaking out now. And this will actually just be different layers that are sandwiched together. That's how the screen's made, but obviously it's not possible to separate that. You can actually see, probably not on the camera, but I can see a lip where there's two layers joined together here. You might actually be able to see on the back here some of the wires coming off this flexed, and they go along onto the screen here. You can just see some of the wiring, that's the thicker wiring, and then there's some very, very fine ones on the other side. They're extremely small, very difficult to see. You should be able to see this green here. And you should be able to see here all these little tiny gold points along there. They're all contacts for driving the display. So that's about it for this video. It's amazing how much there is in a small 14-inch monitor. Now I've got to clear this mess up.